The suburbs of Oak Creek, Illinois, are designed to be a physical manifestation of peace. I should know. As an architect, I helped draft the zoning laws that kept the commercial noise out in the Silver Maples Inn. My name is David Miller, and for 12 years, I believed I was the architect of a perfect life. I had a wife, Elena, whose laughter was the rhythmic heartbeat of our home. We lived in a custom-built colonial with high ceilings and a wraparound porch, a house that felt less like a building and more like a fortress against the chaos of the outside world. But even the strongest fortresses have a weak point. Mine was discovered on a Tuesday morning, hidden beneath a loose floorboard in the home office. I was looking for a misplaced property deed when I noticed the mahogany plank didn't sit flush against the joist. It was a 1/8 inch gap, the kind of thing most people wouldn't notice. But to an architect, it was a neon sign of a structural inconsistency. When I pried it up with a flathead screwdriver, expecting to find a builder's mistake or a nest of carpenter ants, I found a black leather satchel. It didn't belong in my house. It didn't belong in my marriage. As I touched the cold, pebble-grain leather, a shiver ran down my spine that had nothing to do with the draft in the room. I pulled it out, feeling its unexpected weight, and realized the air in the room had suddenly become very thin. The satchel was heavy, smelling of old cedar and expensive leather. Inside, the contents were organized with a chilling, clinical precision that made my stomach turn. There were 3 distinct passports held together by a thick rubber band. I opened the first one. It was Elena's face, the same high cheekbones, the same slight dimple when she smiled. But the name was Sarah Jenkins, born in Savannah, Georgia. I opened the second. Maya Vance from Phoenix, Arizona. The third, Chloe Reed. My breath hitched as I flipped through the pages of the Sarah Jenkins passport. The stamps were a roadmap of a life I hadn't been invited to. Zurich, Grand Cayman, Luxembourg, Singapore. These were trips she supposedly took for editorial conferences, but the locations were the world capitals of offshore banking. Underneath the passports lay a stack of credit cards and names I didn't recognize, and bank ledgers that detailed a net worth in the millions. These weren't retirement accounts. They were active, churning slush funds. I looked at a wire transfer receipt from exactly 3 years ago today. $85,000 moved from an account in Florida to a holding company in the Bahamas. On that same day, Elena had sat at our dinner table, her eyes welling with tears, telling me she was devastated because her freelance editing contract had been canceled and we needed to tighten our belts to make the mortgage. I had worked 60-hour weeks for 6 months to cover our lifestyle while she was moving a fortune in the shadows. I felt a wave of nausea so strong I had to grip the edge of the mahogany desk to keep from collapsing onto the floor. I wasn't just married to a liar, I was married to a professional ghost. Before we go deeper into this story, take a second and hit that subscribe button. Give this video a like and let us know where you're watching from. I'm curious to know how far these stories travel. When Elena walked through the door that evening at 6 p.m. sharp, I was paralyzed. I had put the satchel back, tapping the floorboard back into place with a rubber mallet, but the office felt radioactive. I could still smell the ozone of the leather on my fingertips. She came in glowing, wearing a beige cashmere sweater and smelling of expensive jasmine in the crisp autumn air. She dropped her keys on the granite counter, the counter I had paid for with my last year's bonus, and walked over to kiss me. It was a soft, lingering kiss, the kind that usually made me feel like the luckiest man alive. Now it felt like the touch of a predator tasting its prey. "I picked up those dry-aged steaks you like from the butcher," she said, her voice a perfect melody of domestic bliss. When I watched her move around the kitchen, her movements fluid and practiced as she poured 2 glasses of Cabernet. Was she Sarah right now? Or was she Maya? Or was she the Chloe who had spent a week in Singapore while I was home painting the guest room? I realized that for 12 years, I hadn't been living with a woman. I'd been living with a performance. Every "I love you," every "I'm so proud of you, David," was a line in a script designed to keep the host comfortable while the parasite fed. I needed professional help. I needed someone who understood the dark side of family secrets and revenge. I needed to know how deep the rot went before the whole house came down. "Everything okay, David?" she asked, tilting her head in that endearing way she always did. You look like you've seen a ghost. I forced a smile. A structural lie of my own. Just a long day with a difficult client, Elena. Some things just aren't lining up. Well, she said, sliding the glass of wine toward me. Everything lines up eventually. You just have to look at it from the right angle. The irony of her words felt like a physical blow. She was right. I had been looking at our marriage from the angle of a man in love. I needed to start looking at it from the angle of an investigator. I excused myself to the bathroom and stared at my reflection in the mirror. I looked the same, but the man looking back was already dead. The David Miller who believed in "until death do us part" had died under a floorboard at 10:15 a.m. The next morning I told her I had an early site visit in the city. Instead, I drove to a windowless basement in Chicago's West Loop to meet Marcus Thorne. Marcus was a man who lived in the digital shadows, surrounded by the hum of cooling fans and the blue glow of 6 different high-resolution monitors. I handed him the photos I'd taken of the passports in the bank ledgers. Marcus didn't scoff or look shocked. He simply adjusted his glasses, cracked his knuckles, and started typing. The click-clack of his mechanical keyboard sounded like a firing squad. "David, you're an architect, so you understand blueprints," Marcus said, his eyes never leaving the scrolling code. "What you found in that floorboard isn't just a secret, it's a foundation. Your wife has built 3 entire lives on top of yours. It's called identity layering." Within an hour, Marcus found the Sarah Jenkins profile. It was a masterpiece of fraud, a social security number stolen from a deceased infant in 1985, a credit history built over 20 years, and a trail of consulting fees that led directly to a series of real estate scams in the Florida Panhandle. But the real horror came when Marcus pulled up a set of blueprints from a project in Tampa. They bore my professional stamp. My digital signature was at the bottom of every page. "She's been using your credentials to certify structural integrity for properties that don't exist, David. Or worse, properties that are death traps. She pockets the development insurance, the builder's fees, and then the company vanishes into thin air." "I never signed those," I whispered, my heart hammering against my ribs. "I've never even been to Tampa." "I know you didn't," Marcus said, spinning his chair around. "But the world thinks you did. If one of these buildings collapses, you're the one going to prison. She's built a cage around you, David, and she's been using your own money to buy the bars." He then showed me a GPS log from her car. It didn't go to the airport for her conferences. It went 45 minutes south to Naperville. Every Friday afternoon, without fail, for 5 years. My blood turned to ice. "Does she have an office there?" I asked. Marcus looked at me with a pity that hurt more than the betrayal. "No, David, she has a life there." I followed her the following Saturday in a rental car. My hands were gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles were white, and my breath hitched every time she hit her turn signal. I felt like a criminal, a stalker in my own life. Now I watched from a distance as she pulled into the driveway of a charming blue colonial with a white picket fence and a swing set in the backyard. It was a house I would have admired for its craftsmanship if it didn't represent the total destruction of my soul. The front door opened and a man came out to meet her. He was tall, athletic, with the polished look of a corporate executive. They didn't just greet each other. They fell into a routine that spoke of years of familiarity. He took her overnight bag. She leaned in for a kiss that looked identical to the one she gave me every morning. Then a young boy, Leo, maybe 9 or 10 years old, came sprinting out of the front door, shouting, "Mom!" I watched through binoculars as she scooped him up, laughing the same laugh that used to be the soundtrack to my happiest moments. And the boy had her eyes. He had the same way of tilting his head when he was excited. I felt a physical pain in my chest, a sensation of my heart actually breaking into pieces. I was the weekday's husband, a source of stability and professional credentials she could exploit from Monday to Thursday. This man was her weekend life, the family she actually wanted. I sat in that rental car for 6 hours. I watched them go for a walk. I watched them load the car for a soccer game. I watched her be a mother. I realized that the career woman who told me she was undecided about having children for 12 years had a 10-year-old son in the next town over. She hadn't been undecided. She had been busy. Before we continue, take a second and share your thoughts so far on the story below. I read every single one. I reached out to Robert Sterling, the man in the blue house. I didn't do it through a formal legal channel. I did it as a potential client looking for corporate representation. We met at a high-end steakhouse in downtown Chicago. Robert was exactly what I expected. Confident, perhaps a bit arrogant, and utterly blind to the woman he shared a bed with. Over the main course, I laid a manila envelope on the white tablecloth. "Robert, we have a mutual acquaintance," I said, my voice eerily calm. I slid a photo of Elena and me at our wedding in Napa Valley across the table. Robert picked it up, squinted, and then laughed. A confused, social laugh. "That's my wife, Sarah. Why do you have a photo of her in a wedding dress with you? Is this some kind of prank?" "It's not a prank, Robert. My name is David Miller. I'm an architect. And for 12 years, that woman has been my wife, Elena. We live in Oak Creek. We have a mortgage, a dog, and a history that I'm currently watching turn to ash." The color drained from Robert's face so fast I thought he might faint. He stared at the photo, then at me. "That's impossible. We've been married for 10 years. We have a son, Leo. He's 10. "I know," I said. "And I know she leaves your house every Sunday night to come back to mine. And I know she leaves mine every Thursday afternoon to come to yours. We're both being played, Robert. And we're both being robbed." We spent the next 4 hours comparing calendars. The precision was staggering. Robert: "Last year in June, she said she was at a corporate retreat in Arizona for 10 days. David: "She was with me in Italy. I paid for the whole trip. And I have the receipts." Robert: "The private tutor for Leo. I've been paying $3,000 a month to a company called Vance Consulting." David: "Maya Vance is one of her aliases. That's where the money's going. She's not paying a tutor. She's laundering our money into an offshore account in the Caymans." We realized she had been using our lives as a perpetual motion machine of fraud. She took from me to fund her life with him, and she took from him to build a Chloe Reed retirement fund that neither of us was meant to see. We weren't rivals. We were two bank accounts being systematically drained by the same professional predator. We decided right then that we wouldn't be her victims anymore. If you were in my shoes sitting across from the man who shared your wife's life without knowing it, what would you say first? Share your thoughts in the comments. The final Friday before her planned departure, I invited her to a celebratory dinner. I told her my firm had finally landed a massive Lake Forest project, and I wanted to toast to our future. She wore a red silk dress I had bought her for our 10th anniversary. She looked breathtaking. Across the table, she raised her glass of vintage champagne and toasted to another 12 years of happiness and growth. I looked at her and felt a surge of pure, cold adrenaline. "You know, Elena," I said, swirling the gold liquid in my glass, "I was reading about a woman named Sarah Jenkins today, a girl from Georgia. Did you ever know her?" She didn't flinch. Not a single muscle moved in her face. Her training was perfect. "Sarah Jenkins? Should I? Is she a new client?" "No," I said, my voice dropping an octave. "She was a girl who died in a house fire in 1994. Tragic. Almost as tragic as a woman who spends 12 years building a life out of stolen names and hollow promises." The flicker of fear in her eyes was brief, a millisecond of panic, but it was there. She set her glass down, her hand trembling just enough to catch the light. "David, you're scaring me. What is this?" "This is the end of the blueprint, Elena. I know about the house in Naperville. I know about Robert, and I know about the properties in Florida." She didn't cry. She didn't deny it. She just leaned back, and for the first time in 12 years, I saw the real woman. Her face hardened, the warm Elena evaporating like a mist. "So you found out. What now, David? You going to call the police? You think they'll believe the man whose name is on all the fraudulent building permits? And if I go down, you spend the rest of your life in a cage. I've made sure of that." "I'm an architect, Elena," I replied. "I know how to shore up a building before I trigger the demolition. Robert is a corporate lawyer. He spent the last 72 hours proving that every one of those signatures was a digital forgery. We have the IP addresses, we have the timestamps, we have you, Elena, or Sarah, or Maya. The only thing we don't have is a reason to let you walk out that door. You're bluffing, she hissed. Check your phone, Elena. Check the Chloe Reed account you were planning to use to fly to Lisbon tomorrow morning. It's been frozen by the FBI. Robert and I have been talking to them for 3 days. You're broke, you're exposed, and you're done. We allowed her to think she had one last play. When we let her drive to the private airfield and walk again that morning. She had a backup bag she'd hidden in the garage, filled with cash and her Chloe Reed emergency kit. She had Leo in the back seat, the boy looking confused and frightened. She thought she was minutes away from a jet that would take her to a life where David Miller and Robert Sterling were just bad memories. As she stepped out of the SUV on the tarmac, she didn't see the black sedans until they were circling her. When Robert stepped out of the lead car, holding his hand out for Leo, Elena finally went silent. It was a terrifying, hollow silence, the sound of a void where a soul should be. The federal agents moved in, and she didn't resist. She simply offered her wrist for the cuffs, her eyes fixed on the horizon, already planning her next move in a world that had finally caught up to her. The most heartbreaking revelation didn't come from the bank ledgers, but from the depositions that followed. Leo wasn't Robert's son, and he wasn't mine. He was the child of a man in London she had fleeced 15 years ago, a man who had died shortly after she fled to the U.S. She had used the boy as a prop for over a decade, a way to anchor her domestic identities and make her lies believable. Robert, to his eternal credit, fought a brutal legal battle and won full custody of Leo. He might not have been the biological father, but he was the only father the boy had ever known. Rebecca Cross, her real name, was sentenced to 22 years in federal prison. I sat in the front row every single day of that trial. I needed to see the mask stay off. Even without her propsy, she looked small. She looked like the ghost she had always been. I sold the house in Oak Creek. I moved to a small minimalist loft in the city. I still work as an architect, but I specialize in restoration now, fixing buildings that have been neglected or damaged by hidden rot. I have a lasting friendship with Robert and Leo. We are the architects of a new life now, one built on a foundation of radical, sometimes painful honesty. How would you handle finding out your entire marriage was a financial setup? Tell me if you think I was too harsh or not harsh enough in the comments. Thank you so much for watching. This has been a deeply personal look into a betrayal that nearly cost me everything. If you found this story compelling, and please hit the like button and subscribe to Family Secrets and Revenge for more deep dives into the shadows of the human heart.